Can you feel it? Can you smell it in the air? Opening night, hockey is finally back. 3 games on the NHL schedule tonight. It feels real good to be saying that. Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live. We are streaming on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, and as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary. At Bet365, Tyler Yaremchuk, Carter Hutton with you. Exciting, Huts. Opening night. You're going to have a little 2 TV setup tonight with whatever game's on. Blue Jays, it's good.
I know. Yeah, there's a lot of things to cover right now. In an exciting time, the season's starting. And again, like for me, thinking back to my playing days, like this was the best, right? You're like so sick of preseason. I look forward to next year now when we're going to have less preseason game. We can get right to it. So it's a lot of storylines, some good matchups tonight. And the Jays are rolling right now. Is it going to be, I don't want to even say the word, but they're going to do their best tonight to finish off the Yanks.
Whoa. If you were a player, how excited would you have been for the preseason getting knocked down to just 4 games?
So honestly, so excited. I maybe early in my career, I would have hated it because it would have been like, hey, for sure, I'm not getting a start or seeing any minutes. But later in my career, I was like, hey, less is more. Let's just get to it. Especially what we've seen with the shenanigans in the Florida series between Tampa Bay and that. Let's just get to playing and let's make sure it counts here.
We're going to be joined by Jeff Marek for our big segment today. We're going to touch on a whole bunch of different situations with the host of The Sheet. Let's kick things off, though, Huts, with the news that threw a curveball at us yesterday. Right in the middle of our show, Connor McDavid's extension dropped, and we didn't even get a chance to really talk about the details because they broke just after we went on the air, but a 2-year, $12.5 million extension for Connor McDavid. I guess I'll start with what surprised you most, the 2-year term or the crazy low $12.5 million AAV, or did they both surprise you?
I think I was prepared for the term, with all the predictions and everything that had gone into it. It felt like it was going to be short term. So the number for me was the one that kind of caught me off guard. It was like, wow, he is saying, here you go, right? And even on the show, we had touched on that. Like, is it going to be just a little bit above Draisaitl or similar? And he went lower and he stayed at the same number. And for me, I think it just cements his legacy in Edmonton and what he's done for the city and how committed he is to try to help this team win. We've seen Sidney Crosby do it in Pittsburgh. And McDavid kind of has given them that 3-year window, and he's given, Bowman the ability and the creativity now with some numbers to, push this team over the top. And it's not like we're rebuilding here. This is a team that's 2 years in a row to the Stanley Cup final. It just shows his demeanor, and I'm excited for this little saga. And I don't think it necessarily means after 3 years he's done, but I feel like he's given them that chance now to really do something with the salary cap.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of sort of interesting narratives that have gotten thrown around. And I wrote this morning at OilersNation.com, like if this whole process has shown us anything, it's that nobody's inside Connor McDavid's head and nobody knows how he's thinking. So I say that before I get into my point, which is, it feels like in hindsight, this whole thing, dragging out the negotiation, saying what he said in the media, ultimately signing for 2 years at the very cheap AAV. It feels like this whole thing for McDavid was just about keeping some pressure on this front office. And I think it's funny when people are throwing out the take of, oh, the Oilers have 3 years to build a contender around McDavid. And it's like, whoa, they've already built a contender around Connor McDavid. They've gone to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. And I know you can sit there and poke holes in the roster and talk goaltending, but the point is they're a combined 3 wins away from winning a cup over the last 2 seasons. Like, they have built a contender. I think what this is more about is Connor McDavid wants to make sure that it can be sustained. And when you look at the ages of some pretty important players, especially in that forward group, when this deal expires, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to be 35. Zach Hyman is 6 years old. I mean, hell, even Leon Draisaitl's going to be 32. Darnell Nurse will be in his mid-30s. Matthias Ekholm probably won't be in the league anymore. Like, all these important pieces are going to be pretty close to aging out, or at least, forget the back nine of their career, on the last few holes of their career. Like, I think these next few years are about McDavid, or this front office, I guess, showing Connor McDavid that, like, hey, when Zach Hyman is retired, when Nugent Hopkins is retired, you're still going to have support around you. It's not about building a contender. It's about just sustaining what they have.
Yeah, that's the truth of the matter is they're not in that rebuild phase. That's long gone. And what he's done to get there. And I guess for me, Connor McDavid, in the sense of like protecting himself, when we look at the money and we look at the haircut that he took in the salary cap era, this is huge, right? But for him, for certain athletes that play in big markets, I would love to know how much he makes on endorsement deals as well. Like, he's not going to be hurting for money by any means, right? So he has his dough. He wants to win, and he's expressed that, year in, year out. He wants to be a winner. And now he's shown it. He's shown it to his fans. He's shown it to everybody involved in the game that he wants to help, and he has loyalty to it. He is loyal to Edmonton to try to see this thing through. And now after 3 years, wherever it ends up, right, and they don't win, whether they win, if he walks, I think everybody in Edmonton cannot hold that against him now. He saves face. This is a win deal for everybody in this situation, and I love it.
And not that I speak for an entire fan base, but I do think you have an interesting point there. Like, they do not win in the next 3 years, and McDavid puts his hand up in 2028 and goes, I'm out of here. I don't think there are a lot of sane Oilers fans who would go, what? And like villainize him or whatever. It'd be like, yeah, he's doing you one more solid favor. The organization has, let down Connor McDavid far more than Connor McDavid has let down the Edmonton Oilers, if you can even try to spin your way into thinking that. So this is his last good favor, the last thing he'll do. And if it results in a Stanley Cup, then I think the conversation's interesting in 3 years, whether he stays or goes. And if they don't get close in the next 3 years, I think we know where the next chapter of this story is. But we're going to keep talking Connor McDavid with Jeff Marek in our big segment. A couple of other things I wanted to hit on. It is opening night, 3 games on schedule, the annual triple header that the NHL has been doing for the past few years. So I wanted to talk about a couple of stories that I think will define 2026 or 2025-26 as a season. And the first one I had, Huts, was just how much will the injuries affect the Florida Panthers? They're not going to have Matt Tkachuk in their lineup until Christmas time, after Christmas time, the new year, whatever date you want to throw onto it. And Alexander Barkov is going to be gone for, we assume, the entire regular season, if not the entire season, including the playoffs. It's interesting to look back at last year. Like, Barkov did miss 15 games and Tkachuk missed a bunch of hockey as well. They, used it to their advantage. They brought in Brad Marchand. They brought in Seth Jones. Both Marchand and Jones are still in the mix right now. Do you think there's any chance Florida's in for like a more disappointing regular season because of these injuries? Or do you think that roster is just so deep that they can plow right through it?
I don't want to say disappointing, right? I think that's a tough one for this team because you look at their depth, especially in the back end. And, I do like the goalie situation. I think Tarasov's going to be in a good situation to be spotted starts here to try to Bob a little more rest as they peak into their 4th season after 3 years of going to the Stanley Cup final. But I do see an adjustment here for this team. And I think what they've learned through these past 3 seasons, 2 back-to-back cups, is the longevity you need and the durability to be good come playoff time, right? And that is something that is so important in this league. In a league where that's driven by offense, you need to score to win. You need to be aggressive. You need to find a way to outscore teams to win. Then you got to flip that script a bit when you get to the playoffs, and you need to be able to grind. And this is a team that, for years, I think has been laying the body and being overly physical and running little those interference picks and the way they play the game. So I feel like now they're not really catching anybody off guard. So I look for them to be more strategic in a tough Atlantic division where Tampa Bay looks good. Obviously, Toronto is going to be a contender as well, and Ottawa has kind of put their stamp on their season now. So it is going to be a bit of a transition. So I don't look for a disappointing season, but I look for them to be in the middle, just kind of muddling around and trying to be strategic on how they platoon their minutes out to some of these older guys that got a lot of miles on their tires, Ty.
When the news of Barkov's injury came down, the one name that just jumped right into my head, I was like, oh man, Jack Roslovic just hit the jackpot. He said no to a couple of teams. And I thought that was like a match made in heaven. They have 2-point-something million in cap space right now. They could send someone down, give Roslovic $2.5 million, still be relatively comfortable. But Roslovic, 28 years old, still sitting unsigned as the season begins. You had the young stars and the next wave, I suppose, here, Huts.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this league. And I guess the new landscape of where we're at with these contracts, right? We keep seeing contracts come across the board. We just saw Logan Cooley yesterday turn down a huge deal from the Utah Mammoth. So for me, it's the guys. I look at Celebrini, I look at Logan Cooley, and I look at Connor Bedard. Those 3 big names. And yes, there's a plethora of guys that we could talk about, the young guys coming in. And for me, you go to San Jose, where Macklin Celebrini has had such a great start to his career. And you hear all these astounding things about him at the World Championships and his relationship with Sidney Crosby. And the Sharks are still a team in a rebuild for me, right? I think he's been very successful, in what he's done. But now, can he do it again? That sophomore year as you start to build into that NHL season. So that's kind of the storyline for me, is just the success of the younger players in the league that we've come to know, that have become household names. And where are they going to land when it comes contract time, right? We're seeing these deals thrown around. We just seen what the Anaheim Ducks did with Jackson Lacombe and Connor Bedard in a contract year. Can he bounce back from a year where, he wasn't horrible? For me, I think the Hawks are still in that phase. Now they have a better goalie duo. I think Soderblom has, blossomed a bit. Spencer Knight, can he be that 50, 60 game goalie? And for Bedard, the pressure that's on him this year, through the Blackhawks with his contract looming, something I want to kind of touch with Jeff Marek a bit, because he's an interesting topic with 1 year left on his deal. If he has a big season, where does his numbers end up, Ty?
Yeah, I'm very interested to hear what Jeff has to say about that. The third storyline I had, Huts, was just the bounce back teams. I think you can look in the West, and there are a lot of teams who need to have better years than they did last year, but I'm more intrigued to see if some of these teams don't bounce back, what's the fallout like? Like Vancouver wants to bounce back. They made the decision last year. Miller out, Pettersson stays. That Quinn Hughes thing, the conversation around Quinn Hughes gets very interesting, I think, if they have a poor season this year. And I'm not saying they will. I'm predicting them to be right in the playoff mix, maybe just outside the playoff bubble in the West. But if Vancouver doesn't bounce back, do they have tough decisions to make next summer? I look at Nashville, and obviously last year was wildly disappointing. This year, they're running it back to some extent, trying to prove that it was an anomaly. But what if it's not? What if Nashville's near the bottom of the Central again? Do they need to sit and have some hard conversations next summer? You can look out east, the New York Rangers, hire Mike Sullivan. Panarin's heading into a contract year. You give JT Miller the C. What if it doesn't work? What if you take another step backwards? What if you don't get into the playoffs? What do you do with Artemi Panarin? There are a bunch of teams where they're heading down a road. It is split in two, and I'm fascinated to see which way it goes.
Yeah, and I think that is a topic for a lot of teams too, right? Where we talk about those, are you buyers, are you sellers, right? In a lot of years, I thought last year was a year where nobody really sold. Teams were holding on to guys, trying to be down the road. And, is it going to come back to haunt you as you have expiring players? And for me, the interesting one, I think, is going to be Vancouver, right? Because they're a few years removed from being, sending, 5 players to the All-Star game and being in the mix, and how well but a healthy Thatcher Demko can be a difference maker. And he's had a healthy offseason. So it will be exciting to see, what happens in Vancouver. But that being said, that Pacific division is absolutely loaded. There's going to be a lot of good teams. And I look for Vegas to continue to do that with the cap space created with Pietrangelo being out and the Marner deal. And then another one to watch, I think, in the Pacific is, does Carter Hart end up in Vegas, when that kind of storyline comes to an end, Ty?
Yeah, that'll be a really interesting one with Hart. A lot of kind of reporters and insiders pointing in that Vegas direction. We'll see if the deal gets done in whatever it is, 8 days, whenever he's allowed to sign. All right, let's wrap up before we get to Marek. One thing we wanted to do yesterday but got derailed because of the McDavid news was our awards preview. Continuing that today with the Jack Adams. Andre Tournier in Utah is the favorite at plus 750. Joel Quenneville right behind him. So those two being the only ones that have shorter odds than 10-1 makes sense, because this is, largely, I think we can call it a narrative-driven award, right? It usually doesn't go to the best coach. It goes to the coach whose team had the most surprising results. So Utah getting into the playoffs, you can see the path for Tournier. One guy I like, and I just touched on them with my bounce-back teams, there probably is a narrative for Mike Sullivan to win this award in New York, right? Big market, so there'll be lots of eyes on them. If they turn it around and are a 100-point team, which I don't think is totally out of the picture, you have Igor Shesterkin between the pipes, you have a roster that's just loaded with talent. I'd be interested in Mike Sullivan at 18-1 or plus 1,800. Huts, who do you like on this board for the Jack Adams?
I guess maybe because the narrative award, staying in Canada, I look at Martin St. Louis, right? Being a finalist last year with Demidov coming in, Sam Montembeault having a big year under his belt. There is potential there. And then the other two I would sprinkle on is I would look at Travis Green and I would look at Craig Berube. Just these are teams that are just foaming at the mouth to win and be in that potential race. So I feel like there is value in that sense, but it is exciting, I guess, for Andre Tournier in Utah. That'd be the one. Obviously, he's the favorite and a guy that I got a chance to play for, and a unique coach in the way that he approaches his players, right? So Tournier was a guy, it was the first time in my career, we actually did personality assessments, and he learned what each guy responded best to. And I think it's like that new age of coaching, right? Where I grew up where it was like, hey, they gave you a kick in the butt and you had to learn to adjust to it. So I think it is that new age of coaching. So it will be exciting to see how it plays off with this younger generation of players who turn down big money.
You can't start a push for Tournier to win the Jack Adams if you bet on him. That's unethical, Huts.
No bets, eh?
Let's get to our big segment for the day. Jeff Marek from The Sheet. He is brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app, from game day eats to paper plates and napkins if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip. Before, during, and after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Jeff Marek from The Sheet coming up in about 5 minutes time here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. And Jeff, you got all the juicy parts of the Connor McDavid news yesterday, and let's start there. I've kind of said this line a couple of times. Connor McDavid doesn't take less money, so his GM can go out and sign an expensive third line. Is the expectation here that Stan Bowman will kind of go big game hunting in the next 10 months?
Yes. The question is, where does he allocate that money? Is it Connor McDavid wants his Yari Curry? Is it Connor McDavid wants his Ilya Sorokin? Connor McDavid, does he want another top four defenseman? Is it all of the above? Yes, the expectation here is Connor McDavid didn't leave money on the table just to fill out the six or your bottom pair or your backup netminder. Connor McDavid left money on the table so his manager, as the salary cap continues to grow, holy smokes, maybe 107 next year, guys, has room to maneuver here and maybe, just maybe, get him his own Yari Curry. It'll be fast. You know, it's funny, knowing that I was going to come on with you guys today and talk about McDavid. I talked to someone who's quite close to him, and as because we're all trying to figure out like what the lesson is here, like what should we all take away from this, you know, benevolent move by Connor McDavid, like unprecedented, really. Players have taken haircuts, but not like this. This is a whole different category. And I said, you know, what's the lesson you think we should all take away from Connor McDavid signing a $25 million 2-year deal? And he said, here's the lesson that no one's talking about, that you should talk more about. I said, what's that? He said, when Connor McDavid makes up his mind, there's no changing his mind. He said, that is the lesson that none of you guys are talking about. This is what Connor McDavid wants. Connor McDavid wants to win the Stanley Cup. He will go about, I've always said, like, you know, there's a sort of ruthless pursuit of the Stanley Cup that Vegas always has. Like, they are ruthless about their decisions. This is Connor McDavid's ruthless pursuit of the Stanley Cup. And if it means he has to leave some money on the table, so be it. This is Connor McDavid has made his mind up. He has dug in his heels, and there is no changing his mind. That's what this person who's very close to him told me this morning.
Hutz, I just want to ask one more quickly. A lot of people yesterday were doing the whole, oh, wow, he did his Sidney Crosby. He took a haircut just like Sid did. And I don't think they're directly comparable because Sid had already won and Sid signed a long-term deal. Yeah. To me, this feels more like Connor McDavid's looking at the team that just beat them back-to-back years in the Cup final and was like, if we have any hope of competing with a team who does get their guys to sign for $8 million, like, I can't be in here demanding 17.
Yeah, this is Connor McDavid saying, you've got the state tax, but I can do what I want with my contract. This is the Connor McDavid Edmonton version of you have your state tax advantage. I'm giving my version of a state tax advantage to my team. That's how I look. That's how I looked at this one.
And I love it too. I think it cements his legacy too, right? Just as a guy that, you know, wants to win and what he's done. Now, that being said, I think everything's on the table, right? For Bowman, picks, any picks that you're trying to stockpile, you get rid of, you try to make. How else does this change the market at all? Or does this affect superstars when we think of Jack? Or is this just a unique situation to Connor McDavid being Connor McDavid and trying to win in Edmonton?
This is as much as it's a great question, and as much as teams want to say, hey, look, we have the new comparable. Forget about what just happened in Minnesota. This is unique to Connor McDavid. Like, I know we'll look at Jack Eichel and say, like, you know what, Kaprizov's a winger, so maybe that relates more to Kyle Connor. Look at what Connor McDavid did. I mean, Kelly McCrimmon would love to look at this deal and say, hey, Jack, let's talk comparables here. But when you're dealing with unrestricted free agents, a lot of that goes out the window. I don't think that, you know, Eichel has a number that looks anything like what Connor McDavid just signed for. But then Jack Eichel's already won the Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. You know, he's been there, done that. He's got his name on the cup, and this is a singular drive by Connor McDavid here. So I don't know that the McDavid has created a comparable. I think this is just unique. Very unique to Connor McDavid. Now, does it influence other players? I mean, you've been in those rooms, Carter. I haven't. Tyler hasn't. You're more of an authority on how players think. But I do know that players, you know, measure contracts against one another, which is a whole other layer of this one. I mean, McDavid walks into the room. We always talk about setting a bar, right? We always talk about Sidney Crosby should be in the conversation for the Hart Trophy every year because he sets a work rate ethic that everybody has to follow. He's set a bar. And now your captain walks into that room and says, boys, I know my endorsements are, I think the last time I checked at Forbes, McDavid was like around 6 million for endorsements a year. So that is a mitigating factor here. But he walks into the room saying, boys, I've left a lot of money on the table here so we can do this thing right. And I'll go back to someone, you know, the late great Brad McCrimmon, who, you know, in the 94 lockout, you know, kind of said like, I know this is my last payday, but I'm willing to surrender this to the National Hockey League Players Association so we don't get hosed in the future, right? Like these selfless things that people do in hockey are rare, right? And the point that I've been making about a lot of it is when you're a player, it's not your job to manage the salary cap, which is why I have no problem with what Kaprizov did. You know what? Two things happened. Players accepted a salary cap, and then somewhere along the way, it was decided for them that the players have to manage the cap. The players do not have to manage the cap whatsoever. That's why I have no problem with Kaprizov, and I have no problem with what McDavid did because he was doing what is right for him, his family, his team, and his relentless and at times ruthless pursuit to win the Stanley Cup. I hate telling people what to do with their business. I hate telling people what to do with their careers. You know, do what you want. Tyler, whatever you want to do with your career, I'll support you. It's your choice. You know, Hutz, you want to do whatever you want with your career, I'll support you. That's your choice, 100%. This is what Connor McDavid wants to do. It's what Connor McDavid wants to do. This is unique to him, period.
And we love it, right? It's a deal where, you know, it's exciting. It's great for hockey. It creates that landscape. And another one I want to get off of here onto the next Connor Bedard, right? I talked about him earlier. I really wanted to pick your brain on this. With this new landscape of forecasting the salary cap, you know, he's had a down year last year. If he goes off or if he has a tough year, where do we sit? Like, what does his contract look like as he's going to be an RFA at the end of the season?
He's a minimum 10 million guy, right? He's minimum. We're probably looking at minimum 10 million, 8-year deal. Like you can still sign an 8-year contract until September 15th of 2026, right? So he still has the ability to sign that. He's probably between 10 to 13 and a half. I know he hasn't jumped into the NHL and completely dominated. He's not a top 5 scorer. He's not a shoo-in for the Olympic team, like all these things. But it's good and steady progress from Connor Bedard on a team that's built not to have success and is building very slowly here. So I think he's minimum 10 million and probably closer to 12 on an 8-year deal. But we have to see what happens this season. Absolutely. But you're right. We're walking into think about this, guys. We're walking into a universe, right? We're walking into a universe right now where for the first time in I don't know how long, because we all expect Eichel to sign and Kyle Connor to sign, etc. Are we going to walk into a situation where everybody's got cap space and there's no one to spend it on? Like if you're Adrian Kempe or Martin Necas, are you not saying to yourself, why would I sign now? Unless it's a ridiculous why would I sign now? The biggies are going to be gone, and you're Martin Necas sitting there on July 1st, or Adrian Kempe sitting on. We're the two big guys here, and all of a sudden the cap is at 107. It could go to 100. We all think we're all saying 104, but it might go to 107. Why would they do a deal now? They may end up being the big fishes where everybody has cap space and no one to spend it on. Weird situation.
And I mean, like this past summer, I think it'd be fair to categorize it as like relatively boring from a transactions perspective. Like we never got a rush of big trades. And I saw someone the other day making the point of like, this might be the new normal. Like GMs are going to get so much cap space every offseason that they aren't going to feel the need to make a panic trade and all that. Like, do you think there's a chance it takes a few years I mean, talk about double retention. That might kill the trade deadline too. But do you think transactions will kind of slow down because teams know that they'll have the cap space to fix what they need to in free agency? Like, if that makes sense.
It's a great question. You know what it does, Tyler? It really underscores that as much as we love talking about them, this might be the death of the offer sheet because everyone's going to have cap space to match. Like the Oilers got stung because, oh, geez, we're up against a cap and we can't match this. Who's not going to be able to match an offer sheet? When we're talking about 107 and 113 for salary cap space, you might end up paying a little bit more than you expected, paying more than you wanted. But how many teams are going to be really in that pinch? I mean, coming off the flat cap, Edmonton really got stung, obviously, with Holloway and Broberg. But how many teams are going to find themselves in that exact situation, considering everybody is going to be flush with cash now? And you're right. It might, the double retention thing. Can I just pause on that for 1 second? Because initially when it came out, I was like a lot of people and said, I've never heard anyone complain about double retention. Like, where is this coming from? I've never heard players or media, fans. I've never heard anyone complain about it. And someone said to me, it came at a meeting where I think at least one owner said, "Why this is bad because it doesn't." What it does, and we're seeing this with the San Jose Sharks right now. Previously, we saw this with the Arizona Coyotes. It doesn't force teams to get better. It allows teams to bank cap space to get to the salary cap floor. We need to be in a position where we force teams to get better, because if teams are being forced to get better, their franchise value rises, and in turn, as all franchises feel the same way, if one franchise value rises, everybody's value rises. That's why they don't want, quote unquote, dead money. They don't want two things. They don't want dead money in the system, and they don't want outside money in the system. That's why the double retention came in, because you're just seeing like people parking dead money to facilitate trades. I know we all love it. I love it. We all dine out on trade deadline. I get it. We all dig it. It's fun. But again, as I'm always reminded, Gary Bettman has one job, and that is franchise value. And look at what he's done. I mean, these are all $2 billion franchise, sort of in that neighborhood right now. We just saw the Sportico valuations the other day. And when you started in 1993, it was nowhere near this. But again, so that one, the double retention, goes back to conversations about franchise value and not having dead money in the system.
And if one value goes up, they all go up, and so do expansion fees. But that's probably a conversation for another day. Jeff, you'll be live with the sheet in half an hour. Who do you got coming up today?
Yeah. Tyson Barrie's going to stop by. So Tyson Barrie recently retired, also a former teammate of Connor McDavid. So it's kind of a snapshot into what he's doing right now, both with his beer company and his broadcasting commitments, but also a sort of little snapshot inside the mind of a Connor McDavid teammate, and if at all, what McDavid did yesterday surprised him. So Tyson Barrie along today with Greg Wyshynski, who stops by on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so twice a week with Wish. Nice to be on with you guys.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll chat soon.
I'll wear my white hoodie next time. Sorry, I didn't know it was white hoodie. Black golf shirt. Yeah. Didn't get the memo.
There you go, Jeff Marek. All right, Huts, let's get to our daily face-off inbox question, hashtag askdfo. It is brought to you, by the way, I should say askdfo is brought to you by the Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool. Go to dailyfaceoff.com, hit the little Survivor tab up at the top, and sign up today. I think you have to a puck drop today to sign up. So it is your last chance to get in and play for a $2,500 grand prize. Over 1,000 people have signed up. Here's how it works. Every Saturday night, you got to pick a winner. You can only pick every team in the league twice. You do get 2 lives as well. So if you're wrong once, you're still alive. And by the end of the season, we will have 1 team standing. Sign up today, Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool. Huts, did you sign up?
Oh yeah, I'm in there. I gotta pick tonight. I think, you got to keep it simple here. It's going to be fun. I love Survivors. I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, inbox question. This one came in from Bill. He said, who else would give Eichel $14 to $15 million? And this is why I kind of have like a bit of a problem with people saying like, oh, the NHLPA is going to be so pissed that that McDavid took what he did. And it's like, no, I think one, everyone will recognize that Connor was a unique situation. 2, I don't think the NHL's pissed because the $6 million that isn't going to Connor now, the Oilers are going to spend that on another player. Like, it's a salary cap system. There is a finite amount of dollars that teams in the league can spend on players, and McDavid taking 12 and a half or 18, like that would have just taken away from another player getting that $6 million. And to answer the question from Bill, who would give Eichel 14 to 15? Like if Vegas wants to draw a line in the sand and say, you take a discount like McDavid or we're not signing you, Eichel can go to free agency, and I guarantee you the Boston Bruins would love to give him more than $15 million a year.
Oh, teams will be lining up to give him that money. So that is the impact that Jack Eichel has on the game. Again, when we talk about the superstars, especially a guy like Jack Eichel, I feel like teams across the board will be willing to do that now that the landscape has changed and where the cap is going. He's an instant difference maker on your roster. So that being said, I also think for Jack Eichel, he's got still in his mind where he's been in a market where he didn't want to be, right? He didn't like being in Buffalo. He didn't like living there. I played with him for 3 years. It was always kind of that black cloud over him. That being said, he wanted to help them win. There's value in being in Vegas, though. So, when you get to those numbers, this is a guy that's already signed an 8-year, $10 million deal. So he's made his money. So if he does take a bit of a haircut or he does have that to stay in Vegas and, finish out his career, there's value in where you play too. So I think Jack is going to, put that to the front of the line. He's won a cup there. But again, he can pick his number and somebody's going to pay him, Ty.
Yeah, exactly. Stars, if they want to get paid, they will absolutely get paid. Let's get to our daily bets. It's brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, we're going to do things a little bit differently this year. In the past, it's always just been me picking. I felt so lonely. This year, we're going to bring in our producer, Pat Puff, who finally gets some screen time after working on the show for 2 years. And every day, we're each going to give a bet. So, Pat, I will. Do you want to go first, or do you have someone else queued up?
I mean, yeah, well, I can go first. That works for me. Mine, I'm kind of basing it off your guys. So mine is pretty simple. I'm just going Anze Kopitar, 1+ point. I'm basing this off Tyler's bet as well, so we'll get to that in a second. But if it turns out it's going to be maybe point night for Anze Kopitar.
So obviously, for me, this is I think they're going to be going. I think there's going to be points. And again, I touched on this, Ty. Early in the season, I think there's going to be a little leaky defense and there's more offense created. So I'm going with the old reliable Sidney Crosby anytime assist here tonight.
I don't mind that. Sid, early in the year, -125 to pick up an apple. Puff, if yours hits, mine should be pretty good. Or I guess the other way. If mine hits, yours should be pretty good. The over-under between LA and Colorado is set at 5.5. We got Scott Wedgwood between the pipes. No Mackenzie Blackwood to start the year for the Avalanche. So I like going with the over here for the late game in LA. I don't know if people on the East Coast will be awake for it, but I think it could be an exciting one. Nate McKinnon, Cale Makar coming out of the gates hot. I like the way it lines up. So Pat's playing scared early on. He just wants to tail me a little bit, but whatever. We'll see. We're keeping track as the year goes on. So there you go. That's our daily bets for Bet365. Wrapping up the show with a little of garbage time. It was great timing yesterday as all the suspensions came down for the Tampa Lightning from the preseason melee with the Panthers. The Panthers just kind of slid in and said, oh, yeah, by the way, here's our Stanley Cup rings for last season. The players got them in a ceremony yesterday. They got the nice big diamond back-to-back 2 Stanley Cups on the front. And on the inside, they also have the inscription, "We apologize to nobody," which I thought was very good as well. And once again, fitting because of everything that was going on with Tampa Bay in the preseason. So the announcement was good. And these Stanley Cup rings are, well, they look expensive.
Yeah, those are tremendous. They are cool. The only thing I thought about was the double Stanley Cup on the front. If you were just a first-time winner, right? Like you think about Seth Jones and you think about Brad Marchand joining that team. But that being said, I guess they know what they're a part of as the back-to-back champs. The other little touch that I like is the little rat inside too. Just the way the storyline with Brad Marchand being the rat and the history of that. So it's really cool. It's a beautiful ring, and they've gotten so big, and it's wild. I don't really think you're going to see many players wearing that out in public. That's for sure.
I do think there's a little part of me. I don't know if you've ever seen the Eagles Super Bowl rings from this last year. They have like wings on them that move when you like pull the ring. I feel like we're maybe losing the plot a little bit here. Maybe just a little. That seems excessive.
Yeah, that does seem excessive. I'm fortunate enough. I have a 2013 Stanley Cup ring with the Chicago Blackhawks that we stored in the new office, which I will debut soon. I'm going to leave the map because where in the world's Carter Hutton? So we're moving to the new office. My ring is in there. It's cool, but I do not wear it anywhere. I was just a fly on the wall. I was eating popcorn and cheering for the Hawks most games. That's about all I did for that Stanley Cup run.
So did they give you, like, would you have gotten the same, I'll call it, level of Stanley Cup ring that like a Taves or Kane got, or was there like a check down
I did,
version?
yes.
Wow.
It's based off of the team, right? Certain teams won't spend as much, but for us, they gave it to everyone. And I was playing in Nashville the next season. They actually invited me to the hotel and they did a little presentation for me and gave me the ring. So it's a cool keepsake for sure. So it's tucked away and it's insured, so nobody breaks into my house. Okay.
It's insured. That's a wrap on a Tuesday edition of the show. Hockey is back tonight. We got a triple header starting at 5 o'clock Eastern tonight. The defending Cup champs are in action. And then tomorrow it's a real full slate, so we look forward to that. Steve Peters is going to swing by. Excited to have him on the show every week this season. So another good one coming your way tomorrow. Enjoy the first night of games. Go Blue Jays. And we'll talk to everyone back tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Marek, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.